Good morning. Oh, it's wet and it's yucky. We've had a week where it's been, I think at one point it reached 32.5 degrees at home. So I decided to come out for sunrise, which I knew was a little bit risky because there has been storms. There were storms last night, there's going to be storms today, but I thought, hey, it doesn't look too bad, I'll take a chance. So I got up at 2 o'clock. Oh dear. And I've headed to Lytham St Anne's. And I think you might just be able to get an idea as to how, oh, I don't know if I can show you. Yeah, no, you're not going to see it. It's blooming bland and yucky out there. The wind's picked up, but it has stopped raining. I got here at 4:15 this morning. I went for a wander, found what I was looking for, got absolutely drenched, so then I went sat back in the car. Because it was just so flipping wet, I couldn't do a thing. So the rain has eased off, and yeah, you can kind of see the goopiness up there. It's really windy still, so I'm going to try and shield the mic. Now I think I've seen what it was I was looking for. I'm looking for a boat wreck. I think they're called shipwrecks, aren't they? That water is a yucky colour. You can see it out there. Yuck, 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 yuck. So this is going to be a really, really short and sweet one. I can see the object of my desire from here. You'll possibly just make it out, just about there. And I know I can get down there because I had a check this morning before the heavens opened. What I'm not convinced of is the composition. The clouds are goopy and yucky, which is going to make life a little bit difficult because I'm aiming for sort of a really minimal image again. There's no sign of any light. And as I say, I knew it was going to be a risk before I set off. But the west coast was the only side of the country where the tide was anywhere near what I wanted it to be. So 2 hours in the van. And it didn't rain the whole way here. It was glorious. Right up until I pulled into the car park when the flipping heavens opened. Hey ho. Now I'm thinking long exposures. I want it really ethereal, and I'm hoping this mic isn't getting too confuddled by the wind. The wind's kind of coming in from behind me, which means I'm going to be slightly restricted on my compositions because I need to shelter the camera, although I'm going to have it down fairly low because otherwise the masts that are still sticking up are going to look a bit odd on the horizon. And I think where I want to shoot, turn you around this way. Yeah, you're not going to make it out on here. The clouds are pretty damn goopy, but there's breaks in them right in the direction I want to be shooting in. Hey ho! Because it is fairly breezy down here, combine that with the fact the seawater has been up on the grass that I'm sort of stood on, grassy mound, so it's actually quite slippery. I daren't walk any further out there because I have no idea how deep that is. And I'm really not fancying having to call the lifeguards out because I'm sinking in the mud. There's not exactly a lot of people around that if you run into trouble you can shout for help. As you can see, that's the shipwreck. I feel sorry for her. She's just, I often wonder who kind of owns these things. I mean, they're just abandoned. They've got to have been owned by somebody at some point, and whether they go through insurance and then the insurance company just go, oh, we'll just let them rot. I don't know. It's quite sad, I think. Now, I'm hoping you can see, yeah, the burnt out bits of the sky are the bright goopy bits, and although it's quite breezy here, up there is being quite stubborn, and the sky, the clouds rather, are just not moving at all. It's bizarre. So I've popped on my favourite 10-stop filter, the Lee, and I put a 0.6 soft grad on just to ease the transition from light to dark, the lighter sky against the slightly darker water. I'm on bulb, I'm just letting it run. I did 25 seconds and that was bluer than a blue thing and so underexposed it was unreal. So I'm figuring a couple of minutes. I'm sort of trying to shield the camera a little bit. As you can maybe see by my hair, it's very windy and it is coming in from behind. I want to go over the other side. You might not be able to make it out. There is a line, a mooring line that goes out to her stern, and if the camera will pick it up that could make quite a nice lead-in line. I'm just sort of, I have to be very careful where I put my feet down, just sort of letting it cook. Yeah, not too disheartened with that. I'll pop you around, show you what we've got. So essentially that's what we're shooting, and you can see the darker clouds that I was mentioning. You've got that horrible light patch, which unfortunately the 10-stop is not removing. Because as I say, there is just no movement in that cloud at all. Now that was at, where are we? 10,000 kelvins, 187 seconds, and that's at F9. Don't really want to drop it down a lot more than F9. I mean, I'm not disheartened with that. It's sharp, which I'm quite pleased with. I wasn't sure it would be, given these conditions. Let's just have a... Yeah, that's sharper than a sharp thing. I just wish I could even that sky out somewhat. Although there is now, oops, that band of cloud is slowly moving across the brighter bit. So I'm going to give it another try. I'm just wondering whether I ought to pop in another grad filter, because again, there's still a big difference in exposure between that and that. And that's at 10,000 kelvins, and it's still very blue. Because really, it is blue, but just not as blue as that's making it out to be. But it'll probably be mono anyway. So I'm going to try one more from here, using the 10-stop and probably another filter, maybe a 0.3, just to bring that sky down a bit more. And then I'm going to try and get over to that little bit there, because there's a tie line coming out to her stern. Right, onwards and upwards. Oh, I feel like I'm dressed for the middle of winter. It's not cold. It was 17 degrees when I left the car. But you know, as yesterday was like 32, it feels really chilly. And it didn't help that I'm absolutely soaked through to the skin because I've only got my lightweight summer trousers on. Stupid girl. Anyway, yes, I popped back in to say I've just fiddled around with my filters. I've got a high-tech reverse grad, and I do like using the reverse grads when I'm at the coast. But the minute you mix it with a Lee filter, you get a horrible purpley cast, which if you're turning mono really isn't a problem because it's going to be black and white. But it just grinds me to have that colour cast. So I've just taken the soft grad out and left the reverse grad in, and I quite like that. I've also dropped the f-stop down to I've turned it to F11 because I've taken the other filter out, and the clouds are now moving, but they're still not moving quite fast enough, I don't think. So I'm trying to extend the exposure slightly by having a smaller aperture. God, it seems like, I know I've done 2 trips at the coast, but it's still taking an awful lot of getting back into doing this, having had effectively 9 weeks without a camera. Well, I finally made it over to this end, and it's just as muddy and goopy over here. Excuse me. Now you can see how awful that sky is. Yucky. I'm shooting now in portrait simply because I've missed the best of the tide, because it was hammering it down with rain. There was absolutely no point in me being out here in the rain, because it wasn't just spitting with rain, it was coming down in pigging stair rods. Ideally, I could do with the water being up here. Now I'm going to come back and try again when I get the next opportunity, when the tide is right. But I've no idea how long this poor little boat's going to be here for. You'd have to think she's going to be rescued at some point. She does appear, from the state of her, to have been here quite some time. It's quite sad, that. There's her anchor down there, look. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there's her anchor down there. And I was hoping that I could use that as a lead line, but because of the position of the water, I've not got a prayer. Now, I've had to jiggle my filters slightly. I'm still not convinced it's going to work, but give me a second and we'll have a look. Well, that wasn't quite the morning I'd hoped for. But you have to come and try these things. And I was sat in Mads thinking, I might as well just go home. But I'm glad I didn't, because I've got a better feel for the tides now. So when the weather is looking more promising, and I know roughly where the tide is in relation to the boat, and what sort of time I need to be here and get set up, where to stand, what filters to use, and what sort of exposure times I'm looking at in order to get the image that I want. So it wasn't a complete waste of time. So I've had a reasonable morning. I've had some fresh air. It's been lovely to be at the coast. And now I'm going to go home and have some breakfast, get some shopping done, and see what the rest of the weekend brings. So thank you for coming along. Sorry it's not been particularly exciting, and the images are pretty average, to say the least. But you know, we live and learn, and it's not always sunshine and amazing skies. So look after yourself, and I'll see you next weekend. Bye for now.